welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. I'm John Curren, and today I have with me a very special guest. I'm gonna mess up
Alla.
the name.
Alla. No,
I
it's
don't know why
okay.
I
I'll
guess
say
I
it.
don't.
Alla Kaplan.
I always want to try to be respectful and of
It's
people's
cool.
names. It's like John.
It's all good.
Every house has one.
It's all good.
Anyhow,
Like I said,
anyhow,
I don't get offended because people will mess it up.
yeah.
And it's like I've been called Ella, like Ella Fitzgerald, which is to me is an honor. So
Yes, absolutely.
so
Yeah, absolutely. I've been called John. So that's like
yeah.
one John is sufficient.
Or do people say Johnny ever?
Yeah, my good friends call
Yeah.
me Johnny.
Okay.
Um, my son is also John and
Uh oh.
comes from a long line of Johns. He's the ninth, I think, the eighth or ninth.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow.
Goes back over
So
200
you
years.
have a long history of
Yeah,
John Curren.
yeah. So, but this isn't about me, but you have a
Yeah,
very interesting background. So, as I understand it, you emigrated from Russia at a young age.
I was
Um,
9 when we left in December of 1989. When I'm sorry, 1979. 1989, I was already 19 years old. 1979 in December, and we had to go to Europe to for paperwork and during the immigration. So we
mhm.
actually stopped for some time. We stopped in first in Vienna for like 2 weeks, Vienna, Austria. For 2 weeks, we were there. It was a culture shock, of
And this is
course.
your family? I mean, this is your mom and
Just
dad
me and
and
my mom. Just me and
okay.
my parents were divorced already in Russia when I was like 2 or 3 years old. By the time I was 2 or 3 years old, my parents were divorced. My father was abusive to my mother. So it was like while she was pregnant, actually, he
Mhm.
started. Anyway, so that's
So
not
you faced
really
adversity like just right out the gate, didn't you?
I was like came into the world already in the womb. There was, tumultuous circumstances.
Yeah. There's like
So
a blues
anyway,
song written about
yeah,
you, I'm
I was like
sure.
there's no there it's a country song that writes
Yeah,
itself,
country.
right? So anyway, then after Vienna, we were in Italy for about a month, in a little town called La Dispoli, which is maybe like an hour to an hour and a half or something from Rome.
Hmm.
Very interesting, short, quick story. My mom and I went, she took me to the Vatican to see the Vatican. So at 9 years old, I
Yeah.
saw the Vatican, and I'd never been inside a church or a synagogue
Okay.
or any temple. She was afraid to take me to the synagogue. I am Jewish, unapologetically, by the way. And so at 9, I saw the Vatican, and it was all just
Yeah.
overwhelming to see the Sistine Chapel at 9 years old,
I imagine.
right? And so we were leaving, and somehow I guess she got lost. We got
Hmm.
lost in Rome, and she said that I told her, well, let's just go here and there and there, go here. And she said, we found our way back. I found my way back as if I'd known the streets and lived there
Hmm.
all my life as a 9 year old child who'd been there for the first time in her life. So I don't know, maybe in the past life, perhaps, if you believe in
Yeah.
reincarnation.
I've been
Um,
places to where I felt unnaturally comfortable and like I felt like I knew where I was going. Um, I was when I was studying my genealogy, I went to Minneapolis, and the streets had actually the neighborhoods had all been knocked over, but I was in one of the adjacent like streets that still remained from that time, and
yeah.
and it felt like I mean, you could sense, like I could sense the history and the people almost like walking by. But no, no, I get that, and experiencing that at such a young age. So, was it difficult to leave Russia? I mean, did you have this?
So because we're Jewish, well, I don't know how it was for people who were just Russian. So I'll give you
Okay,
an
well, I do.
example
Yeah.
how anti-Semitic it was at the time in communist Russia, 1979. You couldn't just get on a plane and leave. You had to ask the government for permission to
Right.
leave. Now, on top of that, because my father didn't want to give permission for my mother to take me with her,
Mm-hmm.
she had to get permission from him to you know to immigrate with me, and he wanted money from my family, which they paid him in order for him to
Yeah.
give his consent. That's
Do you
and
ever
then
keep in touch with? Do you ever talk to your
so
father?
now I saw my father 2 years ago for the first time in 20 years. My father is now in Israel in a like home for psychiatric elderly people.
Okay.
It's not a very good place. His ex-wife, who was his wife after my mother, placed him there with my half sister, who I have no relationship with.
Wow.
They're Russian. It was a lot of people. I don't it, whether it was purposely or not purposely, actually married Russian people, married in Russia Jewish people, because so they could leave and immigrate,
Oh.
because the government was just watching everybody like a hawk. You couldn't take your Jew. You couldn't take if you had a diamond ring. You couldn't take your diamond ring. I mean, people they would literally check
Wow.
every crevice, every orifice of your body.
Really?
Yeah, you could basically almost leave with the clothes on your back, pretty much. Pretty much.
Wow.
We were
And
fortunate.
you were 9 years old when
I
you
was
went through
nine
this?
years old when we got here, so we left in December and
Wow.
79, and we got to Maryland, where I live now, in February of 80. So we spent New Year's in Italy. And then I turned, my birthday is in March, so I turned 10 a month after, almost a month after we came.
Okay.
10 years old, trying to assimilate into American society.
Yes.
But at first, it was easier because we were put in a neighborhood where there were other Russian Jewish families. In Maryland, there's a little town called Hyattsville.
Okay.
And so they put us in an apartment with the society. The immigrant society is called HIAS, HIAS, which is Hebrew Immigrant something
Hmm.
association,
Okay.
and it helps not only Jewish people but people around the world to immigrate, and defends human rights and all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's good.
So HIAS was putting everybody into all the Jewish people into this neighborhood. And then I started going to a Hebrew academy, a Jewish school. I knew nothing that I didn't, I heard of my mom and my grandmother and my aunt mentioned talking about, Jews, but I was a child, so I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what it meant. I only know that my mom wouldn't take me to the synagogue in Russia because the Russian militia, were standing around keeping guard. And so she didn't want to take me to the synagogue. So I'd never been, basically knew nothing about Judaism or what it means to be
Mm-hmm.
Jewish, nothing at all. So I started going to this Jewish school in America in March of 1980. And that was my first experience with, just in general, religion of any sort.
That's so, I mean, that's such an interesting story about, how you got here and got you interested. And so you are the Jewish stripper.
The Jewish stripper, not a
So what,
current stripper, a former stripper. Yeah, so I
so how,
started the podcast. I woke up one day and decided that I wanted to start a podcast. And at first, I called it Raw and Real. It was going to be actually with my friend Teresa. We did an episode. We did one episode of Why Do People Cheat? We were like,
okay,
going back and forth on what are we going to do as topics.
brutal
And,
honesty. Yeah.
we're just going to sit there and talk to each other. And so she decided, that she likes true crime stuff, and so, she dropped out. I'm not mad at her. I just said, you know what? Whether I have a guest or not, I'm going to do my podcast at least once a week. This is what I want to do. And I went, Googled raw and real, and there was like 1,000 raw and reels. And I started writing a book actually, which I still haven't finished, 5 years, called The
Uh,
Life of a Jewish Stripper. I have some of the chapters posted on a website called medium.com.
okay.
And so I haven't finished the book because it was difficult for me to write after October 7th because I couldn't write about anything else. So it was difficult for me to write in the book about my life because it seemed like my life is
Mhm.
so minutely um, un, un, unimportant compared to what happened.
What was going on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what's going on now, still going on. So, but I named the podcast the Jewish Stripper and I decided to open an LLC, and I because if I just said, you know, um, advice or something from the ex stripper, and I didn't mean originally when I started writing the book, it was very cathartic for me to put my life on paper. It was Everything was pouring out of me. I was writing it. I was crying. I was This was during 2020 in
Okay.
the height of COVID. At the time, I didn't have a job and I had nothing else to do. And I was like, I can't go anywhere. What am I going to do with my life? And I decided, you know what? I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write this book and everything that's ever happened to me on paper.
Hmm.
And my friends, Teresa was reading it. I was sending her chapters, and she said, "Wow, you are just raw. You're just raw and real." And so when we named the podcast Raw and Real, and then I went back, I said, "Okay, back to the drawing board. It can't be just raw and real with Alla Kaplan, because nobody knows who Alla Kaplan is. But the Jewish stripper, I feel like once I wrote a chapter, once a stripper, always a stripper, because it changes your perspective on the
I'm sure it
world,
does.
and I don't think that you ever think the same way again about you know about
The male female
the
relationship.
the not just male female relationship but human nature in general.
Okay.
I le-
Oh,
I
yeah.
learned, I think, so much about. It says fireflies. AI note is off for me or something.
Oh,
Anyway, I tear up a little bit when I talk about the book. So I'm still working on it. I feel like I'm probably going to end up self-publishing on Amazon or something, because I tried sending out to literary agents, but there wasn't much interest.
yeah.
Um,
You know,
so
your story sounds a lot like mine, and I started this podcast over 10 years ago now with my childhood friend Tommy, who died of brain cancer
oh my
back
God.
back in 2020. We kind of started the same thing. I was here in Virginia, he was in Florida, and my dad had died. So, my
It's a
dad
lot at
was
one time.
well, I mean, back in 2014, my dad, or 2013, my dad had died, and Tommy called me for my birthday, and he said, I think we should podcast. And I was like, well, that, sounds like fun. We'd always talked about different business ideas and stuff, like
Hmm.
friends do. And he's like, should talk about your dad, because my dad was like this figurehead in our neighborhood growing up in South Florida. He raised, like, I learned this after he died, and all like my friends showed up at the funeral in honor of my dad and respect for my dad because he taught them how to be like men. He'd like work out with weights and work on cars and like, be honest and have integrity. And like, I mean, I mean, he also, with that being said, he also taught us a lot of things about not what to do, you know,
That's important. Yeah.
you know, especially me as but, I started writing a book about that. And as I
Wow.
was in process, and then that Tommy's like, you know, I was kind of just spinning my wheels,
Yeah.
but here we go. I say I need to give you the swift kick in the ass here, and we need to have you back on. You need to
I love that name though.
report on,
I
you
love
need to
that
report
name.
on when
Swift
that
kick in
book
the ass.
is done. And what we learned, and when we first started, we're like, what are we going to talk about? How can we advise people? I guess we were in our 40s at that time, raising families and stuff like that, trying to figure things out for ourselves. But we figured it's a journey, and we want to learn about all these different things. So why not learn and share? And, we all have our own experience, um, to base our advice on. So I'm not always going to get it right. This is from my perspective, and it's same for you. You have a very unique perspective. Um, I mean, so many. I'm sure a lot of people can relate um, to your life, and if you help somebody through a difficult time, man, I think it makes the world a better place. It's
Yeah. I had an episode called All About Narcissists
yeah,
because my ex-husband is the epitome of a narcissist, and that was a very that particular relationship, I think, kicked me into gear to write the book because I was still 30 years later, still healing from the trauma
yeah,
and understanding that I have like PTSD and, there maybe I was always bipolar or this caused me to be bipolar. I don't know for sure. All I can say is that it's not, I had other relationships after that. And of course, I always chose abusive or emotionally unavailable men. And I had actually a conversation on Facebook because I put a little post with my brand and my logo, and I put also "Ask Me Anything"
hmm.
as a little post. And this guy who is in Nigeria, he
Do you have
put
a bank account with a
no,
million
no, no,
dollars?
no, no, no. He actually hooked me up with a
Okay.
girl who's a
Oh, okay.
mental health advocate.
Oh,
After he saw my episode about all about
oh, that's great.
narcissists, he saw this episode and he hooked me up with this girl who's a mental health advocate, not professional.
Hmm.
And she just does like videos on mental health, and she's
Yes.
started her own brand. And anyway, so we, her and I did an episode on um, men's mental health awareness, which is important because you know what? If there was more men, how it's difficult for men to reach out and start talk about their mental health because
It
As
is.
boys growing up, you got to, you're told not to cry, be a man, you're a boy, and all this stuff. So we talked about that.
So that's
And
one. Yep.
so I had her as a guest. See, he hooked me up with her. So anyway, they're Christian. They're very, very Christian.
Hmm.
And when he asked me, why do you use the brand of a stripper, and why do you call yourself a stripper when you're not a stripper anymore? And I said, first of all, strippers are, very intelligent. They're more than what you see, just because.
Absolutely.
And don't judge people just because they go and get naked for money. I said, aren't you supposed to be not judgmental because you believe in, Christian, that doesn't Christianity forgive everyone for everything?
Yeah. And didn't Jesus, accept everyone? I
Right.
mean,
I mean, he
right?
was Jewish
The
too.
prostitutes, the lepers. I mean, just
Mary Magdalene.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I know. I absolutely agree.
he said something about, but you should be helping broken people, or wait, you what, you know, aren't you helping broken people? Aren't, and I said, well, if you're assuming that all strippers
Are
are
broke.
people are broken, and I don't like to call anybody broken,
Yeah.
okay,
No, I'm
because
with you.
I'm a
We're all
like,
broken, honestly.
but you know what? I don't think anybody comes into this world as broken. And I I didn't mean, I never,
I
like,
define.
when I
You,
started writing my book, I didn't think at first, I didn't think that it was selfish for me. It was about me. It was, my life, my stuff. And then I didn't mean to think that I'm going to be some sort of advice giver, a guru, a leader. But because people seem to respond to my, when they read chapters of the book on Medium, they responded to it. And so, and then when, the podcast, people, when I started doing episodes by myself, and my friend, when she dropped out of the podcast, I said, I'm not mad. You do your own thing, and I wish you well. And I hope that you do something great. And I think you will do something great. So, but I'm going to keep going
you
on,
should.
because I'm not going to stop. And I think that the, the, the stripping part of my life actually gave me a lot of confidence. You have to have confidence to go on
Absolutely.
stage naked in front of a room full of men. But the women are also, they're judging you. Some of them are your friends, some of them are not. It's just like an office. The thing is that it's just that the club is your office.
So there's a culture there. Like there's a strip club culture, isn't there?
Yeah,
Right? But
yeah,
is it like, I mean, but it is a business and
yeah,
different businesses have different cultures. So I imagine
right.
if you go to different strip clubs, the culture is
Yeah,
different, right?
the culture is going to be different if you go to a strip club where mostly there's African American, Black
Mm-hmm.
women dancing, men customers. There's a different, um, it's when, if we if you had one or two Black girls come into a mostly white strip club, then of course it's like, it's weird for them to be all around, pretty
Yeah.
white girls. And actually, I've worked with some gorgeous. gorgeous people of all races, all colors, all, of course, shapes and sizes, by the
Mm-hmm.
way. So, everybody has a preference. What's one thing you learn about men and women, by the way, and some of them are lesbians or a lot of bisexuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so you, I was never, when I first came into that, I was doing it actually because my ex husband was going to strip clubs and he took me to strip clubs, and I didn't realize he was like grooming me to be a stripper
Oh,
because that's what turned him on. And so
okay.
pornography and stripping and all this videos and everything turned him on. And then I guess I wanted to be at the time what I thought he wanted that turned him on.
Yeah. And how old were you at this point now?
At that point, I was like 22, 21,
Okay.
22 years old.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
really highly
just,
just, open, I guess, open to the
yeah,
world. And
yeah.
probably, at
It
that
was a
age,
shock because I was a very sheltered child. And so, like, hanging out with him, I got into, no, don't get me wrong, like, I got into drugs and alcohol in middle school, pretty much, like, as at 14, 15 years old, smoking cigarettes and
hmm
hanging out with my best friend and drinking her dad's beer or raiding the liquor cabinet.
I'm a little bit older than you. And honestly, that was part of the culture back then.
I don't think
Just,
you're older than me. I just turned 55 in March.
I'm going to be I was born in 66, so I'm 58.
Okay, you're a little bit older.
But yeah, but I mean, back then it was different, I mean, it was like uh
It was the
people,
80s. I was a teenager in the
yeah,
80s. Like our
like,
generation, played outside,
and
not
yes,
Nintendo.
so back in the 80s, I mean, I was in high school from 80 to 84. And so, what was one of the biggest songs out there? Motley Crue, Girls, Girls,
Girls, girls,
Girls, right? Or
girls.
maybe that was a little bit after. Maybe it was at like
No, that was
86 or
like I was maybe like 16 or 17 years old when the whole hair band rock
yeah. Yeah,
era
maybe it was
was
right around the time I
happening.
think I graduated high school, or
Yeah,
it was maybe a little bit after. But
yeah,
in Florida, I mean, I was single. I went to strip clubs, and I mean, hell, they were singing about them on the radio, at the Dollhouse in Fort Lauderdale. And I mean,
yeah.
I was honestly, I was a little bit younger. I was back then, drinking age changed
Mm-hmm.
from
18 to
18 to
21.
21, and I missed the cutoff. All
I
my
did
friend,
too.
all
I
my
had to
friends were
wait.
out drinking, and I wasn't, allowed. So I kind of got a later start, I guess.
I
But
got
but my first legal drink was actually in a strip club down in uh, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I think it was the Sportsman's Lounge, and I had a fake ID, or actually I had my real ID but with like tape on or something like that. I did something. But yeah, I turned 21 in that bar.
I got in trouble because I had fake ID. There was a Russian guy that made fake IDs. My friend and I was always hanging out with older people. So my best
Yeah,
friend from the old neighborhood, when I went to, what happened when I stopped going to Hebrew school when I was like 13, 12 or 13. My mom moved and she wouldn't drive me to the Hebrew school. She wouldn't drive me and there was no bus. So I went from a new shock, a culture shock, because I was like sheltered at the Hebrew school. Although we had our class in the Hebrew school was from ages 6 to 16. with one teacher.
Oh, wow.
That poor man went through hell because we were all drink like, I was at the time 12 or 13, but we were with around the older kids who were drinking and smoking. And
Yeah, and that's who you learned from,
apparently
right? Yeah.
I threw a chair at the teacher. I don't remember this.
Oh,
I got in trouble for throwing a chair at the teacher, yelling, "You're not my father. You can't tell me what to do."
oh my
That's
goodness.
what I was literally hell on
Yeah.
wheels from like when we came to the United States. Because I did everything that everybody told me when I was a child in Russia,
Yeah.
including I got molested, you know, sexually at a young age by my grandmother's sister's husband who used to babysit me. And then right before we left Russia, a man who was helping us box things up
Hmm.
also molested me at 9.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, so I'm a survivor of sexual child abuse as well. So I did, I was a people pleaser. Like I was a child
Yeah.
when, and at that time in Russia, nobody talked about this is
They
you
just
go tell a grown up if something bad happens to you.
so I wasn't molested, and honestly, it almost brings me to tears because I have daughters now. I have a 22-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old daughter, and a 14-year-old son. But that almost brings me to tears. But when I was being raised, in the 70s, my dad actually, like I said, he taught me things to do, what not to do. One was how to handle emotions. He didn't teach me that. He held me up in front of a mirror one time when I was crying. Like I was, hysterically crying. He holds me up in the mirror and said, "Oh, look at the little monkey crying," and basically ridiculed me in
For
there. So,
crying.
yeah. So, I mean, I didn't cry. And when my grandmother passed, who I was very close to, um, she, I started developing headaches, migraine headaches afterwards because all my emotions were bottled up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving over to my friend's house, and I'll never forget it. I mean, I was taking like 800 milligrams of Motrin, which was not even prescription. It was a prescription medication back then.
Yeah.
I'm driving to my friend's house just to hang out, and Ozzy Osbourne's and Ford's song,
If close your eyes.
yeah, Close Your Eyes. Oh my God. I had to pull over to the side of the road and I just let it all out. And after that, all the headache was gone, disappeared. And it taught me the power of emotions, both negative and positive,
Sorry.
and been working since that time to be more emotionally available, emotionally open. But man, it is hard. And it is,
Sorry, I had the
men.
sound like messed
Oh,
up. Sorry if I messed up the sound.
no, I
I'm
think you were
sorry.
okay. I didn't sound
Yeah.
any different. But, just you were, that has nothing, in comparison to what you went through. I mean, but
Yeah,
at
but
9 years old, I mean,
well,
that's
I
got to
was
shape
like
your life.
4 or 5 the first time I got molested. When my grandmother's husband,
You were born
my
under a bad sign.
sisters. No, I don't think so. I used to
No, no,
think
I'm sorry.
that.
I'm sorry. That was just like a blues
Yeah,
reference, more
it
than
was. I
anything
know. I
else.
know. I know. So I was like the first time was like 4 or 5. He would like put his hand in my underwear. We would go to the park, and he would be like hiding it, and um that was like actually one of my first childhood memories. Some people remember things from two or
Yeah.
three years old. I don't remember anything like from 2 or 3 years old, but I remember this one of my first ever vivid memories.
You know, I commend people who come on my show and open up and be. I know that, to me, that takes so much. I mean, to face that and
I'm an
and
open book. I
yeah,
pretty
and
much.
I mean, oh my gosh, I it's amazing. I mean, that's an amazing story. I mean, it just blows my mind, quite
But
honestly,
I
that
don't
you'd
want
have
it
to
to
go through it.
define me.
Right.
I don't, and like with the brand and the logo, the stripper, um, and I actually used to have an outfit like that. Um, I did. The
And
way
if you visit,
the people that designed my brand, it's called design.com, and
okay.
they did an awesome job. And I mean, I don't look like that now, but I did. I I I actually,
Well,
was
if you visit your website, you'll see more
um
pictures of that.
I you know what? I'm working on my website. I need to um do a lot with my website and the podcast because I have to upload the audio, all the audio from the I have to edit the audio and upload it to the RSS feed so it goes on all
Hmm.
the platforms and organize them into episodes from, I've been doing it since August of last year. And I need
Uh,
to, my job, I have a 9 to 5 job. So it takes a lot of time,
yeah.
editing and posting and all of that takes a lot of time and energy. And
It,
in addition to all of that, I was last couple of years, I started studying Hebrew online. So that took up a lot of my time because I wanted to be able to speak it, and I want it closer to my roots, and
yeah.
wanted to speak it when I went over there. And so there's a lot of stuff happening at the same time.
So
And
are you
then
going over to Israel, or have you?
so I haven't since we I went with my mom. We went to visit my aunt and my half brother, who I never met in person. I have a half brother also on my father's side. So I have a sister, half sister, and a half brother on my father's side. Um, my half sister used to communicate with us, and then she stopped. One of the reasons was I kind of gave her a piece of my mind because she stopped communicating with me. We were like talking, and then she went into the army, and women in Israel also are required to
Hmm.
enlist. If nobody knows about this, it's they have to serve unless they have some kind of disability or health
Yeah.
reason that they can't. They have to serve, I think, 2 or 3 years. So they go through combat, a boot camp, all of that. So the Israeli women can kick ass.
Oh yeah, Wonder
Yeah,
Woman.
yeah, exactly. Gal Gadot,
Oh, what
exactly.
a great Wonder Woman she is too.
Right. She's a great Wonder Woman.
She's a badass.
She's a badass, and she's also unapologetically Jewish,
Yeah.
unapologetically Israeli, unapologetically pro Zionist,
Yeah.
which is, I don't want to get into political stuff here because we're talking about, we're
Yeah.
talking, well, speaking of overcoming trauma, there's a lot of stuff that was being ignored about the women being raped and killed in Israel.
Hmm.
So, in any case, so survivors, I realized, one day when after I started doing the podcast, and they have to say that I was reading and saw in some podcast training, when you start a business, the first thing you have to ask yourself is why. Or you write a book and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is, if you want to reach an audience or carve out a niche, do you have a niche? What is your niche? And the
Hmm.
first question you said is why. And for me, I realized that even though I thought it was just me talking and doing different topics, and I realized, well, I am the kind of person that wants to help people. And I said to myself one day, people say all the time, well, why me? Like, they ask, what's so special about me? Why me?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself one day, and I was doing I think, a subject on manifestation and clearing the clutter in your life. And I said it came out, I said, why not you? I said to myself, why not you? And why not you to people? To people who want to have a voice. If they have, if I have this platform of a
Yeah.
podcast, and I decided, I said, why not you? And that's talking to the audience, not just myself. Why not you? What you want
So
to?
many people are self-defeated before they even start because they say, I can't do it. And you're right. You can't do it if you tell yourself you can't, but you have to. But I guess, I guess also what you're talking about too is is you've been, you've gone through a traumatic experience. You survived something. And for you, it's not just one experience. It's multiple experiences throughout your life. And I think things like that build on you. And I mean, your drive is going in a certain direction, and you recognized that and took that power and shifted it into something totally different and something positive. So taking something negative and spinning it, and not spinning it, but
Alchemy.
yeah,
You're an
all transform,
alchemist.
yeah, transforming it into something positive. That is very healthy, and a wonderful thing. And people need to be aware that they can do that. You know,
To
a lot of
take your
people.
power back.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a doctor, and his father, he's also Jewish. Um, I don't think I think I forget exactly what kind of Jewish he is, but anyhow, it
Orthodox, maybe? Or
the original clan, I think I forget what it is.
there's, well, there's
Hasidic.
12 tribes. The
Is it
Hasidic.
Hasidic?
Well, Hasidic is very, very Orthodox, like
I think
ultra
that's
Orthodox.
I think that's what he came from. I think,
The
and anyhow,
background, yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
matter.
he has no hair on his toes, and he says that that's a sign of ultra intelligence. But that's just him.
Somebody said, what if one of your
It,
toes, the toe that's next to your big toe, is longer than the big toe, the that you're super intelligent? But I wouldn't go that far, because I think a lot of people have a toe that's longer than the big toe.
Everyone's looking at their toes right now. My, it's so funny. Back a few years ago on NPR, my wife was telling me about this. There was an article on NPR about hands and about like longer, different fingers being longer than the other.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they said, well, if this one's longer, chances are, you're lesbian. And my wife, like looked around and she says, because she's stuck in traffic in Atlanta. She's looking around and like different people are they're all looking at their hands.
I forgot to hit record on for me on this. Oh well,
That's
you'll have
okay.
you'll have to send me the recording.
We could do that.
Yeah,
But
that's
but but
hilarious.
he but he but his father was a con artist, and so he was
Oh
raised
really?
basically as a criminal in the. I mean,
Wow.
like you know, running scams and
Like pickpocketing,
I don't know. I don't know if they went
or
that
like
like
running scams, like
I I
robbing people.
I maybe like I don't know if like probably I don't know what the word is for it, but it's not good. And he was a true con artist from the way, like selling schemes and things like that. But
Madoff. I mean, he wasn't. Madoff wasn't exactly, didn't make the Jewish people look good.
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
mean, it's
Maybe he
like,
was a student, but
the people come in all shapes, forms, sizes,
right.
races, whatever,
But he turned his life. My friend became a doctor
yeah,
because he wanted to help people,
right.
and he really
Went
changed
the
his
opposite
family. Yeah,
direction.
like his family tree almost. I mean, you know he's creating a brand new
Reality.
branch. Yeah, a
Yeah.
brand new.
I believe in quantum physics. Like, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an expert, but I have read a lot about quantum. I have a book called The Mind's Eye. It's the mind's and the letter I, and it's play on words.
Okay.
And it talks about. I haven't read the whole book because I'm like, sometimes maybe it's an ADHD. I'm
Hmm.
jumping from one thing to another, but so it talks about how you affect the molecules around you, what you say, what you do, what you think. I read a lot about manifestation and abundance, and I did an episode like by myself, about
Yeah.
clearing the clutter. And I sometimes I'll take an article that I wrote on Medium, and then I'll read it, and then I'll talk about
Yeah.
the subject. And mostly it's by myself. I haven't had guests on my podcast, so I would love to have. I'm open to any subject. Like you mentioned, NPR. I'm not a huge fan.
I don't
Um,
listen to it anymore.
I
That was
don't
that
listen
different
to
time in
it.
my life.
Honestly, I'm not on the left. I'm not on the right. I'm an independent. I'm in the middle. Um,
Yeah, I
I
am too.
like I have I'm very, very open to, people who are LGBTQ, what all of
Yeah.
that, because I worked with someone. I didn't know this. We had someone who was a man that was in the club that became a woman and had the surgery, every,
Wow.
and I would have never known had no one told me. She was drop dead gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous,
Yeah.
and
I can't say I understand. I don't understand the drag culture, honestly.
I
But I don't ca- honestly, it doesn't
I just
bother me.
respect people of all shapes, sizes,
Yeah.
races,
I mean,
everything.
if
I
just
respect.
because I don't understand it doesn't mean that I'm saying telling people not to do it. I don't, the way my friend, who's a doctor, explained it to me is he's like people read about criminals and they're like, oh, I just don't understand that. Well, you're not a criminal. So yeah, you don't understand it. You don't have a criminal mind. Just like if you dress in drag, I mean, whatever your mindset is, I mean, you feel
I
that's
mean,
important and that's you. And I have no problem with that.
I have no problem with it. I mean, I have been a lot around a lot of gay, bisexual,
Yeah.
lesbian, whatever people. Um, and I lived in San Francisco for a short while, and
I lived in
when
Atlanta.
I was
Yeah.
stripping. Atlanta. I think is like the number one strip club capital in the world. I think it
Really?
has more strip clubs per capita than any other city in the world. And I visited Atlanta. So when I worked in San Francisco at a club, and this club actually, there was a lot of Asian. I was very shocked by the California girls. They were stunning. I mean, and don't get me wrong, that I worked in DC and the Baltimore area, and I'd worked with actually a lot of other girls at one club who were also Jewish. Like, the owner was Jewish.
Okay.
The one of the girls' mothers came with outfits to sell outfits. Her mother had no problem with her daughter being stripping and being they were Jewish, and her husband owned the club.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was
Wow.
it
So
was a
she'll run it one
family
day.
affair.
She'll run it
It,
one day, maybe.
I haven't been there in a long time. I haven't. No, actually,
Family business.
somebody else bought it. I know, and I used to actually be roommates. I was living with the girl who now her and her husband own it, and she was not like the nicest, best person in the world. She had a drug problem. Actually, her and my ex husband did drugs together when we lived
Okay.
with her. So, like, I'm lucky. I never fell into smoking crack. I can say that.
That's good.
That I'm just fortunate that I didn't. Never tried. Never wanted to. Just and also I kind of felt like when I was with him, that somebody had to be the responsible one. So like I wouldn't drink as much. I wouldn't do as much drugs or whatever. Because somebody had to like take care of everything.
Yeah.
But at the end of the so it's just funny.
So is that what kind of so we talk about a swift kick in the ass on this show. And what it is really is it's a positive thing in my mind. It's something that happens. It's like a moment or an action or something that
An
kind of opens your
epiphany.
eyes. Yeah, yeah, an epiphany. Yeah, to say, hey, you know what? I need to go. I've read some books that like once you read them, they change your view of the world. And I think it's kind of the same way with a swift kick in the ass. It can open your eyes and it change your view of the world. So
So
sounds
what
to me
is a
like you had
swift kick in the
responsibility.
ass?
Yeah, I mean,
What
you had
what do
a,
you what is the swift kick in the ass? Is it like, is it hitting rock bottom?
I don't know. See, I mean,
I'll tell
it's
you
all up for
honestly,
discussion.
I
Yeah.
I I was in AA. I lived in I'm not I guess they call it upstate because it's 30 minutes outside Manhattan. You step off Manhattan and it's upstate.
Hmm.
So so anyway, so I lived like, in Westchester County and Rockland County in New York, where I hooked up with a guy actually who used to come to the strip club. Well, I moved to the Bronx and for a bit, and I was working in a strip club in New York, very close to Greenwich, Connecticut. Greenwich is one of the richest uh, parts of the country,
Okay.
like
I didn't know that.
multi-million dollar homes and millionaires
Old
and
money, right?
old money, old money, and but new money too. Because I had met a guy, and he was kind of like, you know not a stalker, but anyway,
I'm sure you've had many.
I met this guy. He was like 14 years older than me at the time. I was 29, and I was I was moved in with him. His daughter ended up getting pregnant. She was like 19 or 20, and she was in college, and she got pregnant with twins. So
Wow.
her and her at that time fiance, who's now her husband, moved in with us, and I had just he was in AA, and I for some reason, I guess I decided at that time I had quit stripping. Um, I asked him, do you think I'm an alcoholic? And he was like, I can't answer that for you. You have to answer that for yourself. So because he was in AA, I joined AA. So I was like always
Okay.
doing what
So
my
it really wasn't the drinking that
significant
drove you
other.
to, it really wasn't the drinking so much then,
Not
sounds
really.
like.
It was like because he was in this culture that I felt like in order to understand him that I needed to be in the
Okay.
culture. But after like, and they tell you that after 5 years you're gonna think that you know everything. But I stopped after just about 5 years because I realized that Um, the in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion. I'm not telling anyone that it has been there like 30 years or 40 years. They call
Yeah.
old
It's all
timers.
individual.
It's all individual. I got kind of tired of a lot of negative talk because there seemed to be like a lot of judgmental people who were I got tired of the negativity. There was a lot of negativity in my opinion, just me personally. There was just like if you don't do what we think you should do, you know,
Yeah.
just talk about, oh my God, that if you leave, you're going to end up dead or in jail. And I've never done anything
Yeah.
to go to jail. So, and
I mean, it's
as
like
in
there's a
they,
straight narrow path and you have to follow that exactly
right. And,
as
and
is or it's not going to happen.
and
Yeah.
if you leave, and then they were like stalking me when I stopped coming. I would like go to the gas station to get gas, and this guy jumps out of his truck, and he's like, "Where have you been? And what's going on with you?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" Are you? And then like I would be driving, and somebody that was in the rooms, as they call the rooms, I see this
Hmm.
guy standing there waving at me from the meetings, and after I stopped going.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was, they were like, I I think, the dead or in jail is for people who are you know, criminals. They were criminals. I met people who, they admitted I was a criminal,
Right.
from A or NA, or I mean, yeah, there's I saw I remember one lady who, she was married to a mafia guy. And so but I decided at one point it's not for me. It's just not for me. But I was already at that time I started actually therapy. And I think therapy opened my eyes a lot when I started dealing with the trauma.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people that won't go to therapy. They won't even take
What
the
promoted, what got you the therapy?
honestly, this man, and I do have to thank him. I kind of had a nervous breakdown. Um I had more than one. And when I hooked up when I moved in with the guy who was older than me, and I had met him
Hmm.
at the club. Actually, we started dating, and I met him at the club. So it's sometimes
I could
sometimes
see how that happens, quite
strippers.
honestly.
I mean, honestly, you're where else are you going to meet men? And when you're, especially if you're working and you constantly come across different people.
I met my wife at work.
I met my ex-husband at work. We
Yeah.
worked together, and
And no, it wasn't a strip club, just for
it
those who
wasn't
were
a
on the
strip club,
internet.
it was an office. It was
Okay.
an office. And like I said, in the strip club, when
Okay.
you're working in the strip club, that becomes your office.
Right. Yeah.
So basically,
So,
I had a nervous breakdown. I was in the hospital, and then I was referred to a therapist to go after the hospital. And so I had a nervous breakdown once before, a long time before that, and I was supposed to go to therapy, but I wouldn't go to therapy.
hmm.
But when I finally started going, I realized I started letting people in to and getting the stuff out of my head. And I started medication. I didn't realize, I didn't know I was bipolar. I just thought that I was. you know, nuts. And my ex-husband used to tell me that I was a manic depressive. This was before they called it bipolar. They called it
Hmm.
manic depressive. And so, but he was physically abusing me. So
Yeah.
I,
He
I,
had
I,
issues of his own.
I wasn't going to. Yeah, he had his own issues, and when it comes to men's mental health, he had a lot of issues. That
And
turned out that he had been molested as a child, that he had been abused physically by his father. So I stayed with him because I felt sorry for him.
mm,
He was like a child crying on my shoulder, but at one time, and that was his reason for being physically abusive. That was the excuse, and I was, buying into it for for about. We were married only about a year and a half, but together around 3 years. But so, uh, I started to realize when, I guess, when the medication started kicking in and the talk therapy together, that was, I guess, um and I don't knock AA. It they it I learned a lot.
yeah.
Just like, I learned a lot in the strip club. I learned a lot.
You're still
I,
learning.
yeah, and I learn every day.
Yeah.
I'm just not there anymore. It's not for me. But I don't knock it. I did. That's when I encountered um, forgiveness and I don't know if the 12 steps are all for me. I did them over and over and over for 5 years, and I just maybe I was hanging out with the wrong people there too. Who knows? Because
Yeah.
you
Well, there's
gravitate.
all walks of life, right?
Yeah,
In any group.
yeah.
I mean,
So I
so
don't
yeah.
judge them. I don't judge them. I don't judge. No, I don't judge. Like I was telling the guy who was talking about people being the strippers being broken, and
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I worked with women who were not from broken homes, were working on a master's, a PhD. Um, if the girl was wearing a wig and she took the wig off and she was like in a store, you would never recognize
Right.
her because like, I had people recognize me in a grocery store or something. Look, I, was myself all the time. But I know that some women who were raising kids, going to college, and they weren't
Yeah.
from broken families. They were from a family where the parents were together for 30, 40 years. So I said, well, that don't assume, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't assume. Yeah, of course, there were women who had drug problems, had drinking problems, were from broken homes, but not like, don't not. It's not like, I don't know the percentage, 50%, 60%, 70%. I don't know. I don't. I didn't know. I wasn't
Yeah.
interviewing at that point
Yeah.
people for every story, and I've decided I think I should like start going out and interviewing women who are either stripping or no longer stripping. I think that that's going to be something maybe I do in the future.
Yeah. I was just wondering about, I mean, I know what strip clubs were like back when I was younger and single. A lot has changed. I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, that was also, uh, it was pre-AIDS. So, or
yeah,
right around the, yeah, I guess some of that was around pre-AIDS, but I mean, cha AIDS changed things. I mean, COVID absolutely changed things,
COVID.
more in the more recent history. But
Yeah,
I don't know if like strip clubs are, I'm sure, a booming business always. They're always going to be in demand, I would
But
think.
that's not the same because, and but the funny thing, the culture has changed so much because when you see like even movies and singers and dancers and
Oh yeah,
celebrities who it's a the culture, it's not as taboo as it
that's
was.
yeah, that's true.
People are more accepting of it, and you know, the sincerest form of flattery is imitation. And I mean, when you know, Demi Moore got paid like $12 million to
Yeah.
portray a stripper, and that's when you know she I don't know, before or after that, when she went and had her breast surgery, the augmentation.
Hmm.
I think she had the surgery to be in the movie. And to be honest with you, her portrayal, I first of all, I didn't think it was a great movie. I'm not. I don't want to call anybody
That's okay.
out. I don't want to
That's
call
okay.
anybody out
Hey,
because
this is
I
brutally
think
honest.
she's actually a great actress. I just
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah.
think that. I just don't think that I portrayed, you know, the movie. It wasn't a very realistic portrayal of the movie of
Okay.
the industry. There's a movie called the Players Club, and that was
That's
it
more
was
real.
very more true to life,
Okay.
very true, more true to life. But
You are just
the
a wealth of
culture,
knowledge. Let me just say, you keep on giving good recommendations. I
I
think. I
know,
think
no,
the listeners will appreciate that.
I'm so I love movies and I love, you know, books, and I love I'm just I actually I'm a wealth of information that's just random,
Ah, no,
random,
there's something to it. There's something to,
random.
you know,
But
you've been on this incredible journey, I think, and you recognize the importance of growing from it. You really can't, you have learned to kind of, so I'm kind of rebranding. I think I told you. So,
yeah,
my latest slogan is, be strong, be bold, be asinine. And
I like it.
what is part of it is, it's like if you look at a donkey learns to carry a heavy load that they're given, and you're not complaining about it. They learn to deal with it, and they push through. I mean, not to call you a donkey. Gosh, I mean, even I have a problem with my own branding. But you, I mean, you have showed incredible resilience, I think,
I did an episode on resilience too,
yeah, to adversity.
an
Uh,
article on resilience. Yeah,
yeah, and a woman's perspective. I was looking through your videos as well. And talk about um the way a woman feels, the power that she feels as a stripper in the club, in at work. I mean, I've been a customer, and I'll tell you, I mean, there were plenty of times, my the whole party group, the whole group of us, we walked out just empty, you know, or our
but
pockets, and
there's
that was the business.
I mean, there's a movie called Hustlers with Jennifer Lopez, which I'm sure people know, where basically what happened is that was when the bubble, the market, the real estate market hit
Uh-huh.
the mortgage
Okay. Yeah.
crisis
Yes.
back in like 2008, 2007, 2008. When the mortgage crisis
Okay.
hit, they went. It was this is a portrayal of a true story, by the way. The movie Hustlers, it really happened. So they got started drugging guys to get their credit cards to get
Mm.
cash, and so then the strip club, the people weren't coming to the strip club. Everybody was broke because of the mortgage bubble.
Yeah.
The all the loan off the brokers, the stockbrokers, the money, the people with the big money in New York. It's a true story. So if you watch the movie Hustlers, and you'll see it, and so the reputation is that, strippers, all they want is your money. That's, I mean, we had actually, when I worked in San Francisco, it never aired. The episode never aired. There was a show called Real Sex a long time
Oh
ago
yeah, yeah. I
on
remember.
HBO, and they came and interviewed some of the girls in
Hmm.
at the club that I worked at in San Francisco. And one of the girls that I was friends with, they asked her, what are you thinking about when you're dancing and you're doing your
Yeah.
job? And she said, all I see is a big dollar sign. All I want is your wallet from your from you. That's all I want is the money in your wallet. And so there was also a girl I worked with at that time in San Francisco who they would go to Tahoe, and I think there's gambling in Tahoe.
Mm-hmm.
So she would talk about, we're going to go roll a guy,
Huh.
meaning that basically they were going to, drug him up or get him drunk and steal his,
They,
all his cash or money, whatever. That's what they call rolling a guy. And so people assume that, all strippers are either whores or gold diggers. I talk about that
yeah.
in my book. It's in the introduction. It's on medium.com if anybody wants to read it. So, yeah, the thing is, one of me, I wrote about it as well. That sometimes when I was on stage, and we talked about this in the dressing room, what I'm thinking about, what am I going to do for dinner? What am I having for dinner?
Yeah.
Just like when you're sitting in your
Yeah.
office,
Yeah.
okay, and at that time, this was before cell phones, this was before um, Facebook and
Mm-hmm.
chatting and all of that. So you would be talking to your friends at the office, what are you doing for dinner? Or sometimes we had, like, before instant messaging, we had instant messaging at our company where I used to work in the office, where I met my
Mm-hmm.
ex-husband back in like 1991. I was 20 or 21 years old when I met him. So anyway, we had like instant messaging within the company, the computer.
Okay.
So people, I didn't know this, but he was like screwing a lot of girls at the office. He was very handsome. He's a very handsome guy, still is. Um, uh, and I do keep in contact with him occasionally, and yeah, I've forgiven. I could say I've
Okay.
forgiven him, and I forgave myself for being with him, and
Yeah.
I that's a big thing. That's a huge thing. And I talk about all of that stuff on my podcast and resilience and all of that. So anyway, it's just people don't assume, like, that I talk about. I had actually a guy make a comment on one of my episodes that there's no strippers. He said, he was like, meh, there's no strippers. So I said, okay, I'm going to do an episode about strippers. And I did an episode said all about stripping. It had like 7,000 hits,
Yeah.
as opposed to like an episode about abundance, resilience, narcissists. Narcissists had a lot of hits too. The episode, it really like touched a lot of people, I guess. But the episode on, I said, okay, I'm going to do an episode all about strippers.
Yeah.
And I said, don't assume that all strippers are whores or gold diggers.
I yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I did, and our experience as a group, collectively emptying our money, it wasn't, that wasn't just one girl. There was, I mean, that's what the business is there
Right.
for, to empty,
That's what you went
and
for.
we were in college at I mean, it was a bachelor party at the time. I mean, in Tampa, Florida. So there was this place called Xanadu or Spaceship
Heard of
Odyssey,
it.
I think it was, maybe.
Wow.
It looked like a UFO. I almost lost a nipple. I won't go into it was yeah. We have a lot of good, really great story, like my
You
buddies and
almost lost a nipple. That's a very interesting story. I'd like to hear.
yeah, yeah. It was interesting. You have a much more interesting story. So I don't I guess this
I've
is not
got
a clean episode.
stories.
It's not a clean episode anyway.
Yeah, I've
But
got stories. Yeah.
so my buddy has always looked young. He looked like Doogie Howser actually at the time,
Wow.
like a 13-year-old clean cut kid, right? Kind of so we go into this club, and I swear the one of the dancers there dropped down, spread her legs, pulled her lips out
Oh my
like
God.
8 inches, and
Oh
was
my
like
God.
tip the clit is what that was her.
Whoa.
Yeah, and people were giving her money, giving her money, and but that was like the saying that for the rest of the that weekend.
She might
And,
have even been a man before. You would never know it.
ooh, she may have been.
She may
I
have
didn't
been
think
like
about it.
a. You never know.
Yeah, just crazy,
I mean, yeah, and
crazy
people
times. But
people love
but
oddities too. Like
yes.
great,
So
like I said, like everybody has a preference, but
yeah,
if there's like something
but
that you've never seen, you have to go see it.
oh yeah,
You and you
but but
you can't come
again, it's
you can't come empty-handed.
oh, so many places we could go there. But it's not just, but it really isn't just all about the money too. I also know too from a lady friend of mine. It's a good way to say it. Lady friend of mine back when I was in college. She basically they had a all female review. That was like, and so they'd do parties and things like that. She worked her way through college that way.
Yeah.
People have dreams and ambitions, and they would just want to live their life the best they can, and using the resources available to them. And I mean, some
I
of the
said in my book, and I realized, like when I was, well, first of all, when I first started and I was with my ex-husband and I was in the abusive relationship, then after I left him is when I actually, and the power that I felt, the
mm,
I took my power back when I left,
yes,
because that was a huge thing for me to do, is to realize that I will be okay if I leave, that I'm not I'm not the person that I am a full person with by myself,
yeah,
that I don't need someone to define me, someone else. I don't need to be with someone to define myself. And so the power that I took back when I left him, and then I felt so much more powerful on stage,
mm,
and my confidence went through the roof because I took my power back.
yeah,
I continued to dance even though I started it because I was with him. The power I took back, that I felt, um, and
yeah,
I was still doing drugs and drinking, but and actually I started doing more drugs and drinking more when I left him because I was at the time trying to numb the pain,
Mm-hmm.
and physically, uh, mentally. So I started to get into the drugs more because that I didn't have to be responsible for anybody else.
So did you have something that was a breakthrough for you to get away from?
The reason, and I talked about this in a previous recording that I just did with the lady named Anu Venom. She has a podcast called Victim to Victor that I
Okay.
recently recorded. She's in the UK, and she's
Okay.
a published author, and she's a Reiki master, yoga
Oh
teacher,
yeah.
healer. She's very educated. She has a master's, a PhD. She's well traveled. So anyway, when he hit me on the head with a flashlight, like the cops use, big mag
Oh,
flashlight,
ow.
and so I woke up in a pool. I was passed out in a pool of my own blood in my head, and had him arrested. Never had him arrested before, so I went and I had him arrested for the um, the
Yeah.
domestic abuse, and that literally being hit on the head woke me up to the fact, and that wasn't the first time he tried to kill me,
Okay.
but um,
That was the last.
that was the last, and I left. And I'm telling you, guardian angels, because there was a girl that I worked with, and her boyfriend helped me to get a ticket home, of an airplane ticket, because he was basically taking all my money. So I had no
Yeah.
money. But then I started hiding, I started taking a little money and a little bit at a time, hiding it at my locker at work, because he was always taking money out of my hand as soon as I had it, so
Wow.
he can go get drugs and drink and everything. And he was actually fascinated with the people who had the sex change, and he was actually fascinated with drag queens. And he,
Oh,
I don't think he wouldn't didn't want to admit that he may be bisexual or gay or anything. So
okay.
who knows? But the fact is, when I got hit on the head, that was my epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling her also on the when I was recording, I had dreams of killing him, that I was throwing him off a cliff. And so I
Oof.
realized that one of us is going to die, and it's not going to be me. And
Yeah.
I don't want to kill him. I didn't want to kill him. I wanted to kill him, but I wasn't going to do it. So I chose to leave instead.
Yeah. I almost married the wrong woman. Before I met my wife, um, I was engaged to be married, and I called off the wedding about 2.5 weeks before. We lived together, and we lived together in Georgia. And at that time, if a man and a woman with different last names signed a lease together, that was considered uh, marriage or civil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I didn't know that, but
That's
in any case,
interesting.
she
I'm in
was
that business, kind of.
she was crazy. I mean, she crazy redhead. Um, and,
Thanks.
but
I'm not a real redhead, but
but she told me she said, "I wish you would hit me so I know you care." And
oh
for
my God.
me, that was she obviously she was abused as a child as well, and I was like, listen, I want to be with you, but you need to get help. I can't be with you if you're not going to get help. And she didn't want to get help, and I mean, I broke it off. And for me, that was a light switch moment. It was something, we have these very tough decisions I mean,
Yeah.
talking about a marriage, marrying someone, you don't take something like that lightly. And we lived together. So hemmed and hawed, but when I made that decision, it was clear, definite, and very powerful. And you walk away like feeling good. I actually had a friend, an old friend I knew from high school, I knew him a long time, and we had a falling out, and I severed that relationship too. And the last time I saw him, I said, I owed him some money, and I said, here's the money I owe you, but do not say a word, or I'm going to hit you right in the nose. I think. And I said,
Isn't it
and I walked
funny?
away. And
Yeah.
I remember feeling so powerful. And I think you probably felt so powerful when you said, I'm out of here.
Well, I was afraid that he was going to follow me. He was released on his own recognizance. We were in Hawaii. We
Oh,
went from San
yeah,
Francisco. We're living in Hawaii, and I was hoping that maybe in Hawaii, because Hawaiian people are so beautiful and loving and friendly, and just the scenery and
yeah,
being in that atmosphere can make you so happy, and yet I was so miserable. So I was continuing to work, and always, and the clubs were open on Friday nights or till like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I was doing double shifts to pick up. You know, I was giving him the money, and he wasn't paying the rent, and he was buying drugs and whatever. And
yeah,
they have a huge meth problem in Hawaii, California, Hawaii. They have huge meth problem, and they call it crystal, and it's worse than crack and whatever.
yeah,
So anyway, but the Hawaiian people are just so kind, so open, so friendly. And so, like I said, like I thought I had these two people, the girl and her boyfriend were my guardian angels,
mm,
because they went and um they actually, I think, used their frequent flyer miles to buy me a plane ticket so I could leave. I was afraid
you
he was
know,
gonna I was afraid he
yeah,
was gonna follow me, but he actually went and, got with some other girls, and he wasn't he only realized that I was gone, when I wasn't coming back. When he
yeah,
realized I wasn't coming back. And I did come back a couple times, and as soon as he slapped me, I left again, and then I it was for good. It took me a couple times.
wow,
Took
yeah.
me a couple times, but
They say
the
that
fun.
most that happens in most abusive relationships that
I'm just
you keep going
fortunate that
back
I'm
thinking that they're
alive.
going to change. Yeah,
I'm just
sounds like
fortunate
it.
to be alive. I felt fortunate that I'm alive. And then, of course, I had actually tried suicide with pills several years later. This is jumping into, like, it's I think it's like it was maybe like 10 years ago, um
Wow.
10 or 13 years ago, something like that. I went and met him for a drink. um I don't even remember why, but I did.
Okay.
And he told me that my best friend that I used to work with and dance with, who I hadn't seen in a long time, he told me that he heard she died. And I started to
Oh,
cry immediately because I was actually searching for her, and I didn't know that she
right.
had passed. Or And so, we drifted apart, and I didn't have her in my life anymore. And I had a breakdown, and I wanted to kill myself, and I took every medication that I had. And I went through, I felt like I went through Um, I can't even explain it. It's hard to really hard. I felt like I was falling through different dimensions.
Mm.
I had these vivid dreams or nightmares. And when I woke up, I called my mom. I told my mom that I had tried to kill myself. I went,
Wow.
I was in the hospital, in the psychiatric hospital. And my mom didn't, she, for a while, had a hard time being emotionally available. And when I first I was like maybe 20 something or 30, I don't remember, told her about the childhood abuse
Mm.
sexually, and she
Mm.
told me that I dreamt it. Maybe I dreamt it. I was very angry with her. we
Oh,
had
yeah.
we had a very tumultuous relationship at one point, and then when I tried to kill myself and I said that I tried to kill myself, she was like, I don't believe you. And I was like, why would I lie? But
Yeah.
I felt like I was falling through different dimensions. I was going through, like, it was like being in the Matrix or something. Um, Very, very scary.
Do you
And
remember The Lawnmower Man? The movie The Lawnmower Man with Pierce Bronson? I think he
I've never heard of it.
it was a really good movie, and I kind he it was this, as I remember, the basis was there was this guy and he gets put into a computer, and he's or maybe he's a computer life form or something, but he's trying to get out, and he's like putting up his hands, like trying to create all these connections, like trying to get out, and he can't get out. And it was kind of like that's kind of how I'm envisioning like that different,
I
yeah,
felt like I went
yeah,
up and I was falling, 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 falling. And I'm the type of person that I'm afraid to suicide because, like, I'm afraid, I believe in a heaven or hell.
okay,
I believe that,
that's
well,
interesting
I think
because
that there might be, like,
isn't
maybe hell is here on earth. Who knows?
isn't I thought Jewish people don't believe in heaven or hell.
I mean, I'm not
I thought it
religious.
was
I'm not
here.
super religious.
Okay, okay,
So just, but I have, I think I'm closer to a Buddhist than
okay,
anything. I have a big, big, big belief in karma. And
yeah,
I'm just afraid that if I kill myself, where I'm gonna end up.
yeah, okay, I get
Yeah,
you.
okay. So, um,
I'm just glad
so
you didn't. I'm glad that was not successful. And
yeah, and it
I mean,
wasn't the
that was a
first time.
cry for help, sounds to
Yeah,
me like, and luckily you've been able to continue, get the help and continue.
that was that was in 2011, I think, or 2000,
Okay,
and then 2014. It's been several. I've had several, but it's been a while. I'm, I guess, on the right medication,
good.
and just, I think, like I said, the writing the book was cathartic,
Yeah,
and then just feeling, like I said, when I started the podcast and when I wrote the book, I never thought about being any type of a leader or being a help to people, but I realized that why am I the why is that I do want to help other people, but I don't think that people are broken. I mean, you can feel broken, but that doesn't mean that you're broken.
broken.
Or
Yeah,
I don't assume that a stripper is broken because I've worked with women, like I said, they were in medical school, they were in law school. They
right.
chose to do this for the cash to get
Yeah,
themselves through school. They don't assume that they're drug addicts and whores, and you know what? I mentioned this in my all about stripping episode. I said, and if someone is a prostitute or whore, whatever you want to call it, I said, you know what? My definition of whores is different because a lot of businessmen and politicians can be considered whores.
Oh my goodness
So,
gracious. I love it.
so, so my definition, and even being, you know what, a prostitute is an honest living,
Right.
just like being a stripper is an honest
It's
living.
providing a service. It's the oldest known profession.
One of the, if not the oldest.
Yeah. I mean, the sex does sell, and sex is important to human nature. I mean, without it, human nature doesn't survive.
But a
Uh,
lot of it is not even about sex. Like some people
yeah,
just
it's
want to
not right.
talk
It's
to
about the
you.
power, right? As I understand it, it's more about the power. But I mean, I could imagine, I mean, being down there on the floor and looking up. I know what I mean, I'm admiring. I'm loving the beauty
Uh,
and the pole dancing too is freaking amazing. Some it's
so some
amazing.
people do it and some people don't. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly,
I know some
there are
women.
dancers who aren't really doing anything on the pole because they just don't want to,
It
or
takes
well, it takes
strength
a
and
lot of strength.
ability. Yeah.
But the thing is, like, a lot of the girls who get the augmentation, they don't really have to because
Uh-huh.
it
Yeah.
it's
Isn't that funny? I
some
don't
people
have to.
don't, or you know what, I loved it because it gave me this amazing workout.
Yeah.
And I used to hang upside down on the pole and do sit-ups. And like, I actually said, if I had room in my house now, I would put a pole in my house.
I know some women that actually do have that and a pole in their house and one of my cousins actually put a post on Facebook, and she's been doing
Yeah.
several routines, and it's so funny. She starts talking about how she used what was the term? It was so funny to me, ass meat or something like that, like to hold grip on to use her ass meat to hold onto the pole or something like that. I'm like, oh my gosh.
My ex-husband said you have like monkey feet because when you
Uh,
dance on the pole, you use your feet and a lot to
yeah.
hold on to the pole. And because I could like pick up the remote control with my foot.
Uh,
So,
it's
but
to each his own, and
monkeys
I'm
are
sure if
smart
people
too. So,
absolutely, it's so funny because I think based on the title, people aren't gonna if they're offended by this. I mean, they're in the wrong place because we're not, this is not anything
so I
offensive.
I
I think
actually
it's a wonderful
warned
thing. Yeah,
I actually warned in my book at first, like in the introduction, that if foul language offends, if cursing and sexual situations
right.
and anger, because a lot of it in my book
Yeah,
is like, it starts with anger. And I was like, and I'm an angry person, and I think I got a lot of the anger out writing the book. So I said, if those things offend you, this is not the book for you. If
yeah.
you're looking for a warm, fuzzy read, book is not for you.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to keep you on the hook for writing this and finishing this book and getting it
Thank
done.
you. I need
You
I
know,
need the
I
swift kick in the ass
I'll
to
hold
do
you
it.
accountable. I'm gonna check in on you on this because I started writing a book. Tried to write so many different books. There's something called Scrivener, which I use as a program.
Hmm.
Um, eh,
AI. It's an AI.
no, it's not AI.
Okay.
It's basically a great tool that you can use to create like note cards. And when you
Mm.
have a lot of disparate ideas, you
Hmm.
can put them down in different note cards and then start to shuffle things and make sense. And
And that's
it's
a
it's
website
it's a tool.
tool,
It's an application.
like an
I'll
app
I'll,
on
s-
your
I'll
phone.
send. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think they have that. I'll
Send it
send
to
you
me.
I'll send you the
Email
name, but
me. Yeah.
but I think we're running. kind of long
Yeah.
on this show, probably my longest
I've
show
really
because it's very
enjoyed talking to
interesting.
you. I've
Yeah,
just so much enjoyed talking
yeah,
to
I
you.
really did too. I wish you a lot of luck on your own show,
Thank
and
you.
I encourage my listeners too to listen to check her out. You
Saying
know,
and
the Jewish stripper,
you, if
raw and real.
people want to come and be guests, I'm open to almost any topic. I mean, if you want to talk about stripping, I invite,
Yeah,
if you're a stripper or an ex stripper or you're an escort, people, or ex
yeah.
escorts, escorts are also like women who go to school, law school and college. And I don't know if you ever saw the show The Girlfriend Experience. There's
No, I haven't.
there was a show called The Girlfriend Experience by, and the director is Steven Sondheim, who's directed many movies
Okay.
actually. And so the Girlfriend Experience is about escorts, but the women are like, super intelligent and going to law school and things like that.
Yeah. No, I
But
love it.
I invite anyone. They don't have, like we did, like I said, we did the show on with the Nigerian girl about the men's mental health, and how important it is for men,
Yes.
and that really hits
Yeah, I agree
home.
with you too. Yeah, it hits hope for me too. Um, well, mental health is very important. In fact, I mean that's I have to say that this show has been very important to my mental health as well. Um, you know, l- Losing my co-host Tommy back in 2020, I had to, I had a decision to make too. I could have stopped the show, but I felt like the message was important, and so did Tommy. It was bigger than both of us, and it's really to help create positive change in your life. No matter who you are, what you want to do. We're not trying to tell people how to live their life either, um, but sharing our experiences and learning from each other because we got to learn how to relate to one another again. It seems like we've kind of lost that in our country these days.
I'll be honest. I have done episodes on things that happened after October 7th and
Yeah,
October 7th, because I was actually in New York City. We went for the day, me and my friend Teresa, who was originally doing the podcast with me at first.
yeah.
And we went for one day to New York City. On It was last year, or the year before, on
Mm.
October 7th. And she said to me, she saw something on her phone. There's a war in Israel. And I made a joke. There's always a war in Israel. But I didn't know what had happened. And then we took the bus, and we were waiting for the bus to go home. And I saw the Empire State Building was lit up blue and white.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
and I didn't realize until the next day when I got
Yeah,
home what happened. And so I have done a lot of speaking out on my podcast about um, what happened and what's happening. And
yeah,
like I
that's
said,
good. We need to do that.
I'm unapologetically Jewish, so and Zionist, and so I've expressed my views on things. And like I said, if I have
Hey,
a platform and I'm going to use it for, but
hey, you know
because
what? No,
the trauma,
yeah,
imagine the trauma that the families have of the hostages, and the hostages who've been released,
yes.
and the trauma that they're going through. So yeah, I'm going to just keep
Oh,
doing what I'm doing. And I also, what I've learned, and I've spoken about this on my podcast, is that I can do whatever it is that I want to accomplish or want to do, I do not need anyone's permission. I do not approval.
Hmm.
I'm I don't need any permission or approval from anyone to live my life the way I want to live my life.
Here, here. I love it. I that's what I want all of us to aim
And
for.
I appreciate you checking in on me. I do need to finish the book. I kind of stopped. I think I
Well,
stopped
no,
also because I didn't know where I'm going with it. Where I'm going, I got stuck a little bit with the writer's block, and
well,
so. But yes, I need to finish
if
it.
you need any
Let me
input or
know.
comment, throw me some ideas. But I really appreciate your time. And again,
I appreciate
I'm
yours.
gonna say we'll wrap this up. But I encourage all my listeners today to check out Alla Kaplan, and I hope I met. I'm sure Ayla. Yeah,
ALLAKAPLAN
I'm terrible.
3270 on YouTube, or just Google the Jewish stripper,
Yeah.
or go to YouTube and put in the Jewish stripper, and there's all my episodes, including a very, very rough introduction back in August, when um, back in August of last year, when I didn't have any professional background behind me, or I was just like, "Hi, this is my new podcast," and I did it like an introduction for 15 minutes, and that's it.
Hey, but you
But
broke the ice. You broke the
I
ice, and you got going, and you kept going, and here you are today, and you're gonna keep on rolling and gain
thank
momentum.
you so much for having me.
You're quite welcome. Uh, thank you again, and thanks to all my listeners on Swift Kicking Ass. This is John Curren.
Keep in touch.
Peace.
I
Absolutely.
listen. Peace out. And keep in touch.